Hey, we're back. This is your average esports podcast, episode 27. We're almost to the 30th mark. And with me again is Skim of Complexity Gaming. This time we'll be talking about the Dota2 Roster Shuffles because that's finally been finished. The rosters have been figured out by this point. We've even gone through some of the qualifiers, and I'll also talk about some of the CSGO events that have been happening in the meanwhile. But go ahead.
The funny thing is actually the roster shuffle kind of started again. A couple of teams already started disbanding, or people started leaving teams because, after the first few qualifiers, they realized, hey, this isn't working out. Technically, we're not really getting penalized for switching teams or whatever. So it's whatever.
You're not penalized because you didn't win anything yet.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely
no points to lose.
That's absolutely fine by me. It really depends on the team and the structure and whatnot, but sometimes you just gotta shuffle.
Sometimes you just gotta shuffle. Plus, for the teams that did happen or that have been affected, it's usually teams that don't really matter anyway, right?
Yep.
Like that little team, that Odium team or whatever.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and look at the rosters. I guess we'll start with China because all right, so PSG LGD is the only team that's stuck together, and I think we both agree that's probably what they should have done.
Yeah, makes total sense. There was no reason for them to make any change, really. I think play-wise, they probably in terms of just sheer prowess, they probably should have won TI in a lot of ways. It's just really unfortunate that I think OG just figured out the patch so much better than anybody else at that event. So for them, there's in contrast to Newbie the year before, for example, I think we both agreed that Newbie at the time probably hit their peak, and that was it. And even at the event, you probably would have argued that Newbie wasn't even necessarily the best Chinese team at the event.
Yeah.
But I think PSG LGD have proven over the past couple of months that they are without a doubt the best Chinese team and probably one of the best teams or definitely one of the best teams in the world. So. It makes sense to stick together, but we'll see from here on out how this team is going to progress further, because for these kind of teams, it's always difficult to tell whether or not they can continue being a good team, like Liquid did, for example, after their TI win, because a TI kind of always causes a break within a team. Whether you want it to or not, or whether you notice it or not, it just does. So it'll be interesting to see, but generally speaking, I think this is still the best team in China.
Yeah, I feel there's no reason for them to split up. Though you will see if they do have any kind of PTSD from that event. What was it? Kyle calls it fucking Vietnam or something. Can't even look at each other without crying.
That's TI, because ultimately they're going to be constantly reminded of the fact that they didn't win TI. This is the group that didn't win TI together. I will say that some of their players, like FY, for example, obviously he already has that experience, right? I mean, he's already
FY's used to it by now, sadly.
Unfortunately, he is. Yeah, I feel like they're still hungry enough, and they're very ambitious, and they're very eager. So other than it's, I think this is a bit different for this team. So I think they're going to be fine, and we'll continue seeing them being one of the best Chinese teams.
All right. Instead of going roster by roster, I already linked you the entire thing, but if you guys don't know, there's a Reddit thread with all the rosters. At least I don't know if it's still updated or not, but it was after the end of the first roster shuffle, right? So
yeah,
is there any other team you're looking at here is oh, this is a good team, or oh, what the fuck were they doing?
Yeah, I think the one that stands out is the Team Aster one, or Team Aster, or whatever they're supposed to called. They qualified for Kuala Lumpur Major, which I think is the biggest achievement for this is where we look towards the new season, right? The teams that play those qualifiers and that won those qualifiers, those deserve probably our biggest attention. And I mean, even before the qualifier began, I thought this team was probably the most promising out of the Chinese roster shuffle.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be the second best team coming out.
Pretty much. I think China has two issues. They have no offliners and they have no supports, no hard supports. And I think they got one of the best hard supports in Fenrir. I think Fenrir is one of the best and has been one of the best 5-position supports in all of China for years now. And they got XXS, which has always been a very solid offliner, not the best, but also not the worst. And then they solved another issue, which I've been complaining about. China just doesn't think out of the box when it comes to forming their rosters. They keep recycling old rosters, or they keep recycling old players, basically going back and forth between certain and different roster constellations. But this time around, they got D-Stones. Player was basically only semi-pro before. He played in a couple of like teams here and there, but not really that professionally just yet. And he's like a pop star in a lot of ways. So picking him up, I think, was a really huge thing, because ultimately, like, China really needs a fresh start in terms of like these rosters, and that's why you've seen even like in Newbie, for example, they picked up like Cat Yu or Cat Feces or whatever it's called. He's called. I think China has started to realize that if they really want to succeed, they have to like look outside of like the existing player pool, and I think Team Aster sort of like found a perfect balance in that. Like picking up D-Stones is like a very raw pop star, and then having like a lot of experience with Sylar and Fenrir. And then kind of XXS and Boboka, which
are in between.
Kind of in between. Yeah, you could argue they have experience now, but at the same time, there's still a lot of room for them to grow. XXS especially, and then of course Boboka. We know how
he can be good, he can be bad. Like it really depends on the patch with him, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, what I really like about this team is like it's kind of similar to the original EG roster formation around Sumail, basically, where it's like here's the thing about using pub stars or like new players is like you can't get too many of them or it breaks apart, right?
That's what happened with Vici Gaming.
Yeah.
They didn't have necessarily pub stars, so Paparazzi and Ori picking up both of them, I think, was a little bit too risky at the time. But yeah, go ahead.
Like, but
I'll get to that later.
Basically, you need like a very strong balance, and I think Sylar will be the counterbalance to D-Stones, because nobody really talked about it, but I think he was probably like the second best carry out of China last year, Sylar. So,
yeah, pretty much.
So you put a guy, and I think in some ways he's even more consistent than like Ame, basically. So you put him with somebody like D-Stones, and you're gonna have like a very solid foundations for like D-Stones to have a bunch of times where he can like fuck up, but also like push his boundaries. So I think that's a very good combination.
Pretty much. And yeah, again, I think this team is very promising. It's almost no surprise to me that this team was going to be the most promising one, just because this team was formed not as, a new roster picked up by any of like the giants in China, but rather it's like Burning's team, effectively. Like he founded Team Aster or whatever, and he's like their, I don't know, I don't think he's actually that coach, but
he might just be like a GM or something. I don't know.
Yeah, something along those lines. But that I feel like I've been complaining for basically 2 to 3 years now that China is just way too stuck in their ways. Like there's too much politics involved, with Ace being very restrictive up until like 2 years ago now, or 1.5 years, and now China finally starting to sort of like be more creative when it comes to like forming rosters. Not a lot of politics involved. Like look at the list right now. Like there's so many teams that aren't actually necessarily like tied to actual organizations. There's like the most super random squads that you can think of, because I think losing to OG finally made them realize, well, they picked up Ana and Thompson, 2 players that we probably didn't even know before their first tournament.
I mean, they knew Ana.
Yeah, they knew Ana, but yeah, they probably never heard of Thompson, and he showed them that this is not a bad thing. They don't have to wait for a player to like play 3 years in DPL before they pick them up. Like they can just also pick up somebody from pubs, and they starting to do that. Yeah,
Dota 2 is a very like odd game in that sense. Like I don't think you can do that with a bunch of other games, but you can certainly do that in Dota 2 as long as like the other 4 are super solid.
Yeah,
so that's true. I think that's like that's like the trick, right?
I think it's especially true. I think there's more, well, we could talk about that on another day, because I think it could be a very lengthy discussion. But Dota, more so than any other games, because everybody like grinds pop games so hard, and especially on those core positions where you don't really need a lot of experience by any means, because you kind of get a lot of experience playing pubs on core positions already. You don't really need to rely on coordination as much on a core position as you would say like the supports or the offlane. And I don't know, you can kind of just do your thing. Obviously, there's still things you need to learn, like tempo control, strategy, timings, like and strategy. But those things you can pick them up over time.
And they're like, and assuming like I said, you have 4 solid players, they can teach you that pretty quick. It's also the point, to follow up on your point, like, there's also a reason why you don't get really good 5s or 3s coming out of pub stars usually, because those are, like, very hard positions to play in that sense. You can't really grind them the same way, because, like, if I had to put it this way, I'd say, like, 1 and 2 are the closest from pub star to competitive play, whereas, like, 3 and 5 are probably the farthest away. That's how I put it. So, like, that's we'll have to see how that goes. All right. I'm looking through this. I'm looking around. Is Ferrari is back? I'm not exactly sure what to think about that.
He's not really like technically he is back. He started to play competitively again. He did play the qualifier as far as I know. I've been told that he apparently actually did pretty well, but that's
like I heard
iffy.
I heard from
iffy.
Mali who's going to team up with Hal, but I guess not.
That was initially the plan.
Because that would have been a sick plan, but like Hal decided he still needed that PUBG money or whatever.
Pretty much.
Damn it, Hal! Fucking Hal! All right. All right.
Other team, I think Vici Gaming, probably worth noting. They also qualified for Kuala Lumpur or for the first major. So
like
I
don't believe in Yang. I'll never believe in Yang.
Actually, did they qualify there? I think they did. No, this.
All right. Well, I'll go look it up. Because all the qualifiers are done basically.
They did qualify for the major. So one of the things that I mentioned earlier is that I think Vici Gaming, the season before, one of the big issues was that they acquired both Paparazzi and Ori at the same time. And then they threw them in together with like a very solid trio of like the support and the offlane, which was again very solid, but it was probably too much throwing in both Paparazzi and Ori at the same time. You could argue that, hey, OG kind of made it work, but at the same time, OG have had more time to work with Ana beforehand already, and they didn't have to nurture him again.
Like they knew everything they needed to know about Ana. Like, Ana didn't change.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that was really troublesome for Vici Gaming throughout this entire season, making this sort of like core duo work. And they haven't really figured it out. I think one of the issues is actually that they're very similar in terms of playstyles, which is something that EG still has to figure out regarding RTZ and Sumail. Or have spent years trying to figure out.
Yep.
Vici Gaming, I'm not sure if like just qualifying for the major is really means that they figured it out, because ultimately it's the beginning of the season and they probably had one of the biggest advantage heading into the season because they already had like a core foundation of like players that played before together.
Yeah, they only have changed one player as far as I can tell.
They replaced the entire 3-man core.
No. Like, I'm thinking somebody else,
Yeah, 11, Alon and Fenrir all left, and they got Yang, Fade, and DY. But again, they have at least the core duo of like Paparazzi and Ori, so that's like fine. And I think it probably is better this way because I believe when the team was different before with Lanem was the captain, or together with Fenrir, they did like the captaining. But as far as I know, it is now Paparazzi who is sort of like semi taking the lead in this team. Obviously, the shot calling is still going to be on the supports, but Paparazzi, even before in IGV, was a very vocal player as far as I know. So maybe it's for the better to have the team be even more focused around these two players specifically, because ultimately that's what they really want, right? Play and draft and structure everything around Paparazzi and Ori, because they spend a shit ton of money on these players. I think the Vici Gaming owner bought one of the organizations that one of the two were contracted and that Ori was contracted to, just so he could buy Ori as a player.
Wow.
I think that's the rumor anyway, and I'm not sure if that's actually the truth, but yeah. Right. That should show you that, you know, they really want this team or they really want these to succeed. And I think this roster is like, okay, like you, I don't really believe too much in Yang either, so I don't think they're going to get far, but I think there's a very solid foundation that they can probably like build around further.
All right. I think that's about it for China. There's not that much interesting.
Actually, no, there's one more team I want to talk about.
All right,
sorry.
Hit me.
It's RNG with 343 Afu. Afu, again, I think one of the best 4-position players in Asia.
In literal hell, yes.
And they have Monet, who's like a very solid carry. They have SRF, who's also a very solid offlaner, actually. And then they have Mikasa as a coach, who's been pretty much one of the most successful coaches in Dota history. So I don't know. We still have to see this team succeed, but I think this is a very solid foundation yet again. I wouldn't be surprised if they made a change somewhere along the line, because I mean it's Dota. If they are not going to be the top three.
Yeah, they already failed out of the qualifier, so they may as well.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's what their thinking is. I don't know enough about like 343 or Mikasa to understand how they look at team building.
Yeah, me neither. But that's the thing, right? Like Dota is just Dota. Like throughout this entire season, if you don't think you're definitely like a top 10 team, there's always going to be that threat of a roster change being a potential alternative.
Yep, agree with you there. All right, move on to CIS. Sir,
CIS.
All right, here's my question:
Yeah,
you think
go ahead.
Virtus Pro should have switched?
Difficult, because I don't think there's a particular player that needs switching. I think one of the biggest changes that they did was removing what's his name, Artstyle as coach, and I think that already in itself is a very big change for them. Because ultimately, if you look at how the team has been playing at those big events, and I wrote like an article about this as well, like the issue has just always been that they don't show up and that they choke on the big stage. And I think they just need some. I don't think that Artstyle. I don't want to take anything away from him, but I don't think that he added so much to like strategy and drafting that they desperately needed him. I think they were fine without him, and they will continue to be fine without him. So I believe that the next step should be a coach that could sort of like help them through like this sort of like mental block effectively.
Yeah, but I don't know enough about the CIS scene to even know if there's someone like that, right?
Me neither.
Yeah. All right. The only other interesting thing is Saniko is back.
Saniko's back. Finally, as much as I love Dendi, Navi has finally decided to form a team around Saniko instead of Dendi.
Took a while for the coup d'etat, like 3 years, longer than it should have been, probably.
Probably longer, actually. It's just very unfortunate that it has taken so long, because
like basically Saniko's already wasted his time as like a superstar player. Like
pretty much
he can only be a leader now. That kind of sucks.
But the thing is, like, he is a good, as far as we can tell, based on like his track record, Navi has always been the strongest with him as drafter and captain. So yeah. I think this is probably the best Navi roster. Just based off of that, I think this is the most promising roster Navi has had in a long time. I mean, even if you look at just the names, like Crystallize, I think was actually really strong carry when they picked him up.
I thought Crystallize is pretty good. I don't know about the other three. I mean, I haven't seen them play, so you'd have to fill me in about that.
Blizzy is a promising offlaner, I want to say, or a promising player in general, I guess. But I don't know. I think this team right now it's like whatever, really. I think all of CIS scene is really whatever at this stage, because there's not been enough time.
Yeah, I think they need to I think they're like one more roster shuffle away from getting like a really good second team. I don't know who that second team is, but I don't even know which players you absolutely need in that second team. I feel like maybe Crystallize would be one of them, but for the other four, I'm not sure.
You definitely need or want somebody like Saniko to lead the team, or just any leader. And that's one of the big issues with CIS, right? They've never really had like a very strong leader whose authority was so strong that nobody would ever doubt him and everybody would respect him no matter what.
There's literally only Solo.
Well, and Puppy, obviously, but
Puppy
he's not
left,
in CS. Right.
So, I guess you would gamble on Saniko, but who knows? Like, I'm not sure. Like, there's so much weird shit going down. Like, in terms of like here's the thing about CIS is nobody really understands their own strengths. That's why you always get like a bunch of players switching positions that make no sense.
And
Yoki,
even if they do understand their own strength, they don't like look for what's best for the team, but rather they are very selfish in a lot of ways, and they're trying really hard to find their own success as opposed to like finding success for the team.
It's also why like they gave Dendi the captainship over Sneeko, even though that made zero sense. It's like, okay, go ahead and run that trial again. Let's see how it goes. And then they bombed out. Like,
so we'll see. I actually think that for Furzy, or however you pronounce it, the one that with Vanscore, I think that has a fair shot of being like a top 3 team this season. Even though history has shown that Vanscore has never been in a team for longer than 2 months, basically.
Yeah.
But when he's been in a team where he's technically been for a long time, I think those teams have usually done really well. Alpha Ninja is also one of the better players in general, has a lot of experience now as well. King R, my opinion, also a really good player. But again, all of these players, and I could pretty much say this about any CIS team, they haven't really stuck around in the team for too long, so it's really difficult to make a call like that, like who's going to be the second force. So if anything, you definitely want to look towards like the big organizations, Navi, potentially Team Spirit. I think Team Spirit have 2 players with Oliver 9 who, in my opinion, should have been 2 of the most outstanding players last season, but because of how the roster shuffle worked out for them, they weren't really in a position to make that impact. But I think Team Spirit, again, also with FNG as a really strong captain, I think this is a team to look forward to look out for. They almost, I want to say, qualified for Dream League, I think, the minor. Oh no, never mind. They only placed 4th in that one. Shame on them. What was I watching the other day? Was it Hamburg? ESL in Hamburg? Must have been ESL in Hamburg.
There's only 3 of them, so if it's not that, it's probably Hamburg.
Either way, I do think that this team, generally speaking, has a lot of potential. Again, Oliver 9 really strong, but like potential on paper, that's like one of these oldest CIS sort of like issues. On paper they all have a lot of potential, but
like,
you know,
we'll see. Like here's my problem is I think not only like in terms of if we're talking about organizations, the only organization there's actually only 2 organizations in the CIS region that have proven to me that they can make teams. Virtus Pro, obviously, and then Empire. Because like Navi basically lucked out on their team when they first joined Dota, and then they just stuck with it, right? So I don't count that. But the problem with Empire is like they can't keep anybody, and then Virtus Pro is like the only organization that like basically broke everything apart and gave solo dictatorship. Whereas I don't know if anybody else, any other org would do that, and I don't know if any player that can like do that either. So it's like they're probably just gonna have to keep shuffling until they find either the right 5 or like a dictator shows up. Like PPD style.
Or like, honestly, I think one of the big issues that CIS has is something that a lot of other regions have already fixed, but like mixing. I know CIS, much like China, has the issue of a lot of players just don't speak English. So for them, it's really difficult to actually just expand. But ultimately, I think this is what they need to do. They need to expand, and they need to find like leaders from other regions. Like SEA, they've had leadership issues, so what did they do? They brought in Demon, they brought in 1437, they brought in Eternal Envy. Like, bringing in players from the outside is ultimately what you need to do to succeed. And this is why I also look forward to Team Spirit, because Team Spirit, they are technically a CIS team because it's a CIS organization, and they have FNG as their captain. But ultimately, like there's like 4 non-CIS players in that team, right? And this is, I think, ultimately the goal for CIS, like finding success outside of their own region. I mean, literally the most successful CIS has been pre-Virtus Pro was Resolution in America.
Yeah. Resolution went the other way. It's like, I'm out. See you guys later. Yeah. All right. I think I got my cards there for CIS. Like, I'm not too excited about this region until they get a really good second team going.
Same.
Let's go to Europe. And all right, let's start at the top. Liquid. I think you said like you wanted them to change. You still think they should have? And who would it have been?
Liquid?
Yeah, Liquid. Like,
did I say they should have changed?
After TI.
Oh no, yeah, I did. Yeah, no. So one of the things that I think that Liquid should have changed, I want to say that's what I said, at least that's what I currently still think, is probably Matuma Man. Matuma Man, as much as he might be as useful as he might have been for the team, and like he's not a bad carry. I've always rated him as a good carry, and I think you were that told me that he told you that
he's
effectively
like
he's doing. basically second caller, but I think that a lot of carriers can do that. Maybe obviously I'm looking at like if it's Team Liquid, right? So they probably want to carry that can once again put them in a top 3 team in the world position. So they need to look at a carry that's like a top 5 carry in the world or whatever. And if you look at those kind of carries, you definitely can expect that carry to be like a second shot caller. Like those qualities do exist in like the top 10 carry players in the world. So I feel like Matuma has like, or obviously it's part of why Liquid or part of how Liquid approaches the game, but in my opinion, Matuma just has never really been the carrier of the team. Like in terms of like actually carrying them towards the goal. You know how we look at. Yeah, he's a role player. You know how we look at like certain players like star players and like clutch factors. Like, worst case scenario, that player will come out and will just carry you to the finish line, right? Miracle is that player. GH is that player.
Mind control can be sometimes.
Mind control can be that player, but when do you ever look towards Matuma and think to yourself, well, he can be?
Yeah, pretty rarely, unless it's like a specific hero.
I know this is something that a lot of role players sort of like have, you know, that kind of issue, because ultimately they play a lot of sacrificial roles, they play like more strategic roles, whatever. But still, even in the EG, for example, with a TI5 EG, when they won with Fear was a very, very much a role player. Like he played any character possible that just allowed the team to win, but he still pulled his own weight, and he still like pulled out like Sven when we got like ultra kill or whatever. Like with Tomoman, you just don't see that right now. And I think.
What do you think of that move, actually?
Fear to Team Liquid? I actually think that could work. I literally could think that could work. But again, it's difficult to say what could work, because a lot of with this team is also like, are you willing to follow Kuroki to the ends of the world?
Well, I mean, and if you aren't, like, how could you not be? He's like the best captain right now, probably.
True. You definitely need to be able to put your ego aside. So, so when I say that I think they should replace Matuma, I think this is more like. This is more so me saying that if there is a player more well suited to Liquid, they need to find him, because I think Matuma, if I had to point out a weak link, I think he would be the weak link. And again, I'm saying this about a team that has consistently made like top 4 throughout the last season. It was like the 3rd best team in the world right now in terms of like TI ranking. TI 7 champions. Like saying this isn't saying that Matuma is a bad player or that he is definitely the worst player of the team. I just think that if you can get like, let's say like you get Arteezy, right? Let's imagine you could get Arteezy.
Maybe
if you could get Arteezy,
I want to get.
Yeah, if you could get that Arteezy, 100%, you replace Matuma with that one, because he just felt like he can be a role player while also carrying you to the win. Like that's just the thing.
Well, we'll have to see. I actually did write a buy and sell, but I have no clue when it's going to be published. But I did say sell on Liquid for very similar reasons. Like I feel like there's no up. I feel like the only way for them to go up is if they become the #1 team in the world, and I just don't see that happening right now.
It's difficult for a team like this to go up after 2 years of like basically trying to stay at the same level in a lot of ways.
Like they've already done like something that's considered impossible in Dota 2 for sticking around this long.
Yeah.
So it's like, can I keep like? Listen, there's only 2 teams that have ever like stuck this long and like actually like broken the ceiling. Virtus Pro from CSGO, and then even after 4 years, they eventually broke up, right? And then Wings, and they only had like 2 months before they had to die. Like, it's not gonna happen, right? So, history.
It really isn't. It really is. I don't think it's gonna happen. So I don't know. Team Liquid. If I had to sell, I would also sell Team Liquid. Like if I look forward to that article. But again, yeah, I would also sell in Liquid hard right now. But speaking of teams that I would buy hard is Alliance. Alliance is a team I would buy.
I didn't buy them at all, but it's like I don't know how the fuck this team looks like actually in the server. I've actually seen them play because there's like 4 people I haven't seen in a long time in Koifa.
So basically, Alliance plays really crazy Dota. They have their own meta, their own approach to the game. It's one of those things where you think to yourself, well, this could totally backfire. You know, they could technically like having your own approach to the game can mean one or two things. Like either you're gonna it works out against like all the trash teams and you're like starting on them, but then against like the top teams you're utter trash, or it means you're so difficult to find out that they're just gonna have to ban like the most random things against you, and you just, no matter what situation, you're always going to be a threat because your style is so difficult to adjust against. And I think right now and then the phase where their style is really difficult to adjust against. Their picks are super out of this world. Like nobody else is picking heroes and like strategies like they are, and they're making it work and they're playing really well. I think I've been saying this for a long time now. I think Mickey and Insania to me are two of the most interesting players to look at in Europe right now. Again, much like Nine and Oliver, I kind of expected them to maybe be more impactful in the last season already. But hey, I think this season is definitely it. Like, they already qualified for what, Dream League, I think?
Yeah, they've qualified for Dream League in Hamburg, and no, not Dream League, Kuala Lumpur. They're already at the major.
Oh, they're already at the major. Well, see. So they're at the major, and that's, I think, super dope. Like, this team probably won't do much at this major because they lack a lot of experience.
Yeah, they're also
like,
going
aside
to Hamburg,
from
so it's good, I guess.
It's very good for them because this team, like, outside of Quokka, nobody has been on a tier 1 line in Dota. So these players really need this experience going into the major. And again, I think there's so much potential for them. Like Mickey, I am friends with a lot of people that were into Han, right? And everybody tells me that, Mickey is like the shit. Like, wait for it, he's gonna do miracle things. And it's like, all right. And he does play really well. Like, you can tell that he's sort of he has the potential to be a star player. And that's what I'm kind of looking forward to right now.
Yeah, I will see. I'm not going to bet on any team with this little amount of experience, at least at the outset. You got to show me something at the land first before, like, I see something. But all right, the fact that they did qualify for the two big lands coming up does speak something to them, though.
It does speak something to them, but at the same time, you kind of have to look at how those qualifiers worked out. I mean, Liquid was dead in the water. Like, they were basically never a threat. And then outside of, like, outside of Liquid, there weren't really any threatening teams to begin with. There was, like, Final Tribe, which is basically the other, like, okayish European team, the Swedish one with Chessie and Hanskin era. And then there's, like, Team Lithium, which is like the Kezu stack, but none of these teams are really that threatening. So I think I wouldn't overrate them qualifying for the Hamburg major, Hamburg major, the Kuala Lumpur major too much, because they also lost against NIP NIP won against them very convincingly. In the lower bracket, at least. In the upper bracket, I know Alliance technically won over them as well, but I think it's still too early to say anything about them based off of this win. But generally speaking, the way they play, and I guess the fact on top then that they did qualify, is something worth noting. And in the coming months, I do expect this team to sort of like play for the third spot in Europe, or the fourth at least. Third is difficult to call because OG might not even participate in any Dota tournaments until like 2019.
Yeah, I think they're just done until 2019. It makes sense. Like, actually, I think Liquid probably should have done the same thing, but like, whatever. Here we are.
Honestly, they really should have. And when they lost this qualifier, like when they lost so convincingly, quote unquote, I almost thought that they should definitely take a break. But they're still going to go to Dream League, which whatever. But yeah, like I feel like this team needs a little bit of a break and probably needs to find that hunger again. I'm not saying that they aren't hungry right now, but like when you pull out what Liquid did last season, I feel like you definitely should take a break from the game. Like, so I don't know.
All right, so the next two teams probably shouldn't, but even though they technically had like as hard of a grind, go with NIP first. What do you think of this team?
NIP, I mean, you know me. I think we both agree that PPD is one of the best captains in Dota history.
Yep.
So any team with him as a captain is a force to be reckoned with. I'm a bit of a Fata fan as well. I think I've rated him very highly for years now because he's consistently been able to keep up with actually most mid laners in a lot of ways. It's just been very unfortunate that he can't really always I think he is less consistent than most top mid laners. That's why he's not really rated as highly. But I don't know. I think this team has a lot of potential. 3-3,
I think
definitely one of the biggest winners last season. So yeah.
Yeah, I think the 3-3 PPD combination is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Like I feel like that's the combo basically out of the old Optic team that you had to keep together. The leader and then like this weird off lane superstar player. But like my problem is like I guess it'll really depend on Fada, Saksa, and Ace. Like I feel like you need a clear second win objective beyond 3-3. And I'm not sure why, but like Optic they didn't really have that with Pycat, even though like Pycat was like their win objective earlier on in that lineup, but like he was less so when 3-3 came online.
Well, that's the thing for me. It's always been with Pycat. He's never really been that player either. I think he's always been one of the most consistent carriers in a lot of ways, and he's been a very threatening carriers. Like he's always you always have to be careful of him still like being farmed and stuff like that, but he's not really the guy that like pulls like 4 dead bodies over the finish line, like we mentioned earlier with Matilda Man, right?
Yeah,
I think in a lot of ways he is some sort of role player because he's also got a very diverse hero pool, but he's never really been that like, all right, I'm just gonna like finish the game by myself, like give me 10 minutes and I'll finish this game. And I don't think that Ace is that player either yet. I think
like he has specific heroes that he can do it on, but like beyond that, like the rest of them aren't that good. Even though he's played like a shit ton of heroes, like the rest of them aren't as good.
But I do think that Fata is that kind of player. If you look back on his time with Cloud9, his play from the mid position was actually really important for them, like a really important win condition from them, for them. OD Beastmaster, like he would constantly be like the top of the net worth as a mid player, and then just constantly basically put the team on his back with both item decisions but also like his movement on the map. So I do think that Fata can be that winning guy for them, but again I don't think he's been that consistent when he's been at the top. So I look towards PPD as like getting the best out of this team, because I think PPD has always been able to get the best out of his team and like making sure they play in a way that suits everybody.
Yep.
And that's, I think, is going to be really important with Fata, but then also of course with Ace, because we've seen last season that Ace hasn't really been that player that Secret needed him to be, and he still has a lot of room to grow and he needs a lot of experience still. So I think PPD, honestly, if you think about it, Ace is one of the luckiest guys in the world if you think about it. Like he gets to play under Poppy and PPD this early on in his career.
Like if he can't make it in either of these squads, I don't know if he'll ever make it.
Yeah, like honestly, if this season isn't, if we can't look back on the season and say he was a really strong player, or like he was like one of like the top 10 carries in the world, or like top 7 or whatever, I think it's like a huge failure already. Like he had the breakout year under Puppy, and it's fine that he didn't necessarily perform as well as probably they wanted him to. Mind you, they still placed top 4 or whatever. I'm not saying that he had I'm not saying he had like a shit performance or whatever. But based on what they wanted out of him, and I think people expected out of him, I think he didn't really live up to that potential or to those expectations. So this year's, it's not really a lot of excuses for him, I don't think. Again, he's in a team that has a lot of promise. He's playing for a superb captain, and once again, he has like two cores that can work around him. Like Fata and 3-3 have diverse hero pools. They can, if they wanted to, like if they want to give Ace his hero again, or a hero that he's comfortable again with, they can always draft around that.
Yep.
So I think there's no excuses left for Ace, but still, I do think this team is a force to be reckoned with. And like I said, if OG doesn't show up this season, I think NIP is a top 3 in Europe confirmed for me.
All right, the last team from Europe, Secret. Now, I'll start off with this. I'm not convinced by this lineup, but I don't know enough about Nisha to convince me. So what do you think?
So one of the big issues I've had with Secret last season was that they sacrificed too much to make Ace be like a good carry. That they like mid 1. I've actually had this discussion with somebody else before. So mid 1 is probably top 3 mid laner in the world, or at least like a top 5 mid laner in the world, right?
Yep.
But last season his performance was more so top 10, which is still not bad, but you want him to be the best player in your team because he is always going to be the best player in your team. Like that's just how good he is. But last season he was not the best player in the team necessarily. And and definitely not all the time. And that's one of the big issues. This is why I think Secret wasn't able to win as many titles as they probably should have, and not getting further at TI. I think one of the big issues was that they sacrificed too much for Ace. And I think Nisha is one of those carriers that you don't really have to sacrifice too much for.
Okay.
He can be like a shining star, even though you don't pay much attention. Like, you don't need to babysit him. You don't need to draft for him. Like, his hero pool might not be as diverse as Ace's was, but I think he has more heroes that he's better with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ace has like 3, 4, 5 heroes where he's like super good at, and probably the best in the world, maybe.
And then the rest are mediocre.
Super mediocre. But Nisha has like 10, 15 heroes maybe, where he's like, well, you can still always get what you need out of him.
Okay.
So I think Nisha is a very solid pickup for them, in a lot of ways just a really straight up upgrade over Ace.
Like, here's my other problem. Even though I think Zai's a really great player, we already tried this 3 rule. I don't know why he's going back.
To be fair, when he was with Secret on the offlane, he was actually really good.
Yeah, but that was like years ago. And it was a different game. It was a different game back then too, right?
I think it'll be interesting because he has one of the most explosive 4 positions in YAPzor with him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, together, I can see them running really wild on like offlanes, on like dual offlanes. I think one of the reasons why he thinks the offlane suits him again right now is because it's like dual offlanes is like the shit right now, and having a really super flexible offlaner and a flexible 4 position can win you the game, or the laning stage.
Okay.
So I don't know. I think the experiment is fine, but I wouldn't be surprised if at some point down the road he like switch teams at some point again,
or just kick out YAPzor.
I doubt that's gonna happen though. I think YAPzor and Puppey is a really good combo. They really complement each other really well. Worth noting, by the way, that they wanted Zai even in the last season already. Like, before they picked up Fata, they wanted Zai, but he refused because he had made a prior commitment to Optic, or to PPD rather.
Yep.
But I truly think that Zai wants to play offlane. Like, that's why he played offlane in Optic, right? He really wanted to play offlane again. I've talked to him in person actually. It feels like support is just too boring to him. Honestly, it feels that way, even though he's one of the best players.
Listen, if we ever go back, we'll see. Because offlane's so different. That role changes the most, seemingly.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's definitely true, because the safe lane or the side lanes are usually always drastically changed year after year, and that always changes the offlane position drastically. Like, we're talking about dual lanes right now, but in the next patch, it could be totally different meta and totally different styles, totally different heroes. So we shall see.
All right, now go to NA, and we'll start with your team, actually. You have teamed up not only with the Dallas Cowboys, but with anime itself, with Eternal Envy. And you have created an unholy union that I never expected to happen, but here we are, and here Complexity is.
So all right, give me your thoughts on this roster first.
First off, I don't know who Skimberlu. I don't know how you pronounce that. Is like
he wants to be called Skim.
All
just
right.
Skim anyway.
Skim's fine.
So we have Skim and Skim in the company right now.
All right. So I don't know much about him as a player, but the fact that he's from SEA, I'm just probably gonna guess he's like a high skilled core player.
Very high skilled, very explosive core player.
All right. So you got that. Then you have Limp, and I think I don't actually rate Limp that highly, but he can do his role. So you have to. So in that sense, it's fine-ish. In the sense that, like, if you have a high skilled core player, then you probably just want like a solid mid laner to complement him. I don't necessarily know if Limp is that guy yet, because like he's like solid at his level, but I've never seen him play solid at the next level above that. Snaking is on and off for me. Sometimes he's great, sometimes he's bad. I think it really depends on his team around him and how it functions for Snaking to work. Then we got Z-Freak, and I think Z-Freak is a very good 4 player, but he needs more resources than a normal 4 player requires. But luckily, he has the man that is, for whatever reason, like Eternal Envy has like completely reversed his like resource income, even though even though he plays a similar sort of way, like super Eternal Envy in a sense. Whereas like, if you think about his early career, he's like, yeah, just give me all the gold. I will create farming patterns. Then I'll get the shit ton of gold. Then we'll carry the game. Now he's more like, last season is more like, oh, actually, I will be the sacrificial carry. And then this season is like, oh, I'll be the sacrificial 6. Like, what was going on? But I still think, I don't think he was as good as a sacrificial carry as he was like a hardcore carry. But I don't necessarily know if that will carry over to a 6-way because that's a very different role. So, who knows?
It is a very different role, but I think, you know, oh no, sure. Finish your thought.
So basically, if you follow the Eternal Envy rule, like the more anime the moment is, the more likely he is to do well. Well, this is about as anime as you can fucking get, because like none of these guys are like super well proven besides Eternal Envy himself. And I mean by super well proven, I mean like you've won titles and shit, right? Like only Eternal Envy has done that on this team. So this is about as underdog as you can get for an anime story. So in that sense, it does look pretty good for Eternal Envy. And I did see that clip of him practicing Void 6 position and then using a fucking chrono to de-ward. So I got a good feeling.
Alright, I agree with most of your assessment pretty much. I think Skim... So the Skim pickup is like, whatever, can't really talk too much about it yet because we haven't actually played with him.
Mm-hmm.
He has not been able to get a visa yet, so we have been playing with first Fear and then Jo as a stand-in.
Mm-hmm.
And then, generally speaking about the rest of the team, Limp, I think... I mean, he's consistently been like the top 3 leaderboard in NA for like the last 2 years now. A lot of people would say that doesn't really matter, but it kind of does in a lot of ways because it tells you a couple of things. Like first, the drive and like the competitiveness to like continually grind the ladder, and then also the fact that he's like, if you think about it, like who's in NA, who's competing in NA, Arteezy, Sumail, like he's been consistently proving himself against these players both on lane and just in general in the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why if we ever play NA teams, I always feel comfortable because Limp, in the matchup, he knows how to win the matchup. Or at the very least, prevail in the matchup. Like, if it's not Sumail, he will likely win that matchup in NA. That's actually really impressive. Like, last season against Optic, we knew we could just draft whatever because we knew that he would crush CCNC in the lane.
Mm-hmm.
And it pretty much happened super consistently. And there was one LAN where it unfortunately didn't happen, but still. It was very consistent. But I do agree that I think Limp, one of the issues is that he doesn't really rise above himself in a lot of ways. He plays his own level, and that's really good, but he never like has like monster performance where he like lashes out and becomes like a beast. Like he never enters God mode.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really big issue, and like if anything, he tends to make bad decisions. Like he does choke and tilt every now and then, and that's really crucial for a player of his position because, I mean, you know, we do allocate a lot of farm to him. But I think, and this is where I think Envy comes in. Envy as a player, as crazy as it might sound, he actually does command a lot of like authority and respect to him. Like I know, you know, like the whole, like if you honestly, if you listen to him talk about the game, you know that he, like, nobody is more passionate about the game and nobody understands the game. In a lot of ways, nobody understands the game better than him.
I'll say this, right? Like, no matter how many memes have been like attached to Eternal Envy throughout his like years of play, right? I've never heard of any player like disrespect him in terms of his knowledge or his drive.
Exactly, and I think this is really important for this team because Limp, especially, I think, if anything, has always been having issues mentally speaking, because he, in terms of like raw gameplay, I think he, in terms of like individual skill, I think he can be one of the best mid players in the world. I might be stretching a little bit, but still, he is incredibly well skilled in terms of laning stage. Like often he actually has more farm than even Sumail. So this is one of those things where I think having somebody like Eternal Envy in the team can really help you because Envy, I don't know, I think Envy in past teams has proven that he can sort of, you know, basically.
Listen, if Eternal Envy can get Sing Sing to a top level, I'm sure there's a chance here.
basically, like no. No shit. I remember when I had this whole like Mount Rushmore thing with Thorin, I put Envy there because one of the things I really valued about Envy Captain is the fact that he's able to elevate others onto another level, specifically players where I thought it wasn't necessarily possible. Like Weeha, I'm not saying I don't want to attribute Weeha's success only to Envy, but Weeha finally broke through in secret with Envy on that team.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that Envy has the ability to sort of like help other players be better versions of themselves, like much like
Bone 7, AUI,
Sing, yeah,
like
exactly.
Plenty of players have fallen under that category.
And I think Limp might be Paladai even, yeah. Mm-hmm. Like I think Limp might just be the next on the list here, together with Skembelu or Skem. So this is really important for the team. Z-Freak, I have no doubts in my mind that he's
like we already know Z-Freak's like a rock for this team. It's just about resource management, but Eternal Envy knows his money game, so I'm sure he can figure that out.
And I think this is where snaking sort of like fits in line again. I personally do too have had my doubts regarding snaking as a player, just in terms of individual skill.
Yeah, like he's on and off.
But now that I've watched them play together in their official matches, I think him and Z-Freak really work well together. And I think one of the key successes to Z-Freak in this team has always been finding him an offlaner that he meshes well with. That's why pre-TI we went back to getting Moon Meander, because him and Z-Freak, they just have they have a chemistry, and they synergize really well together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think snaking, because he doesn't necessarily play cores that need to be greedy or that need time, that can just go. Like, you can just, like, pick... I mean, we picked him an Ogre Magi, for God's sake. Like, we had a offlane Ogre, and together with Z-Freak, it just works because they could just play off of one another.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is...
Yeah, that's an Eternal Envy move, isn't it? You think I'm picking Ogre for myself, but I was actually thinking all along. Fucking looking Eternal Envy. All right, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so because you do need a not only does Eternal Envy have to sacrifice himself, but sometimes like another core does have to sacrifice himself for Z-Freak. So
especially if you also play with another core like Limp, who's like extra greedy. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that Limp plays like I'm not saying like greedy in a bad way. I'm saying that in a really good way. If you look at his games, he usually is the highest net worth of the team.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we'll have to see though, because like you said, Skem still hasn't even shown up yet. So yeah. It's not a guaranteed thing either way. Like the fifth player could change it all. All right, so we'll go to a team I think we both agree should probably be one of the top teams come into the season. EG, like
EG,
no doubt, right? Like I don't think there's anything critical to even say about this team.
No, I think going into TI, one of the things we said was that if anything, this roster change happened too soon, because I think this has a lot of potential, but obviously not succeeding at TI has always the implications of like breaking the team.
Yeah.
Right. But luckily they stuck together. They realized that this is something like that. This TI was too soon, and the next one is something they should be eyeing. So yeah, I look forward to this team basically being one of the best teams in the world.
I will say this, like Fly doesn't have the same power he did on OG, so I have to on some level like you know, I did that interview with fucking Mad, right? Where basically he's like, right. Yeah, Fly leaving wasn't that bad because it was usually me and No Tail that was coming up with all of the ideas and shit. On some level, I think that might be true, but we'll have to see.
No, I mean, this is why I think OG was also or continued to be as strong as they did, because I mean, technically speaking, if you were to lose your like absolute leader, you would be crushed. But I mean, considering OG still won TI, it definitely goes to show how much the others had influence on that team. And mm-hmm. I've talked to Matt before as well. Like it's definitely like it was definitely like a mixed value sort of kind of thing where everybody contributed, but at the same time, EG has the same construct with Bulba as the coach, and then obviously Arteezy Sumail. So, if anything, I think
I think Bulba's very smart. I'm not necessarily certain. Like Arteezy and Sumail are smart in like their very specific roles and how it plays out to the team, but they're not going to be like coming up with like weird OG shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but then true, or well, even that, but then you still have like S4 and Crit, two other
like,
former captains,
like,
right?
I think
I feel like
I don't know about Crit, but S4 certainly does have a lot of
yeah. So I think this team is like very, very fine right now. Probably still like a top 3 team in the world.
They should be basically, this team should be trying to win championships right now. That's my view on them.
No, definitely. They should be looking at winning the major. Like the major needs to be something that they want to win. It would be a really important statement for the team as well.
Yeah, like the only team I think, like, I don't know if they'd feel fine losing to. The only team I think like they should lose to at this point is probably LGD, unless Virtus.pro get the right patch.
Yeah.
If Virtus.pro get the right patch, then they'll probably beat everybody. But that's like, it's like praying. You don't know if it'll happen or not. All right, so is there any other Forward Gaming? What do you think of Forward Gaming? I think that's like the last good team from NA.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty much the same team as last season, VGJ Storm.
Yeah, except they got Universe.
Except they pretty much an upgrade. No offense to Sneaking, but I think getting Universe is always going to be an upgrade. I mean, he is one of the best offlaners in the world. It's a good team. I think this is, generally speaking, a team to reckon with. But I don't know. I don't really feel like this team has what it takes to like win titles. I know they technically won a minor before, but that really doesn't matter. Like you can win as many minors as you want. It doesn't matter. Majors where it's at, and I just don't see this team winning a major just yet.
Yeah,
I feel like they're one roster change away from.
I feel like they're too one-dimensional for whatever reason. Like I think that's like their great weakness, is they're too one-dimensional. So
yeah, I could see that, but yeah, we shall see. I actually haven't seen them play with Universe yet.
Yeah, so I haven't seen them play with Universe. I'm just based it off like the last group, and like I'm not certain how much Universe changes that or not. Like I don't know enough about SVG as a captain to know if he can actually like utilize what Universe brings to all of a sudden like create a bunch of strategies and shit. Like, because like it's both SVG and Resolution, right? So we'll see. Like, what about South America? You see any good teams here you want to talk about?
Probably worth talking about Pain X, which is like the or basically both Pain Gamings, I guess.
Okay.
So the first one with, well, they're both could be American pretty much.
Yeah.
I actually think Pain X has been playing in American qualifiers. I'm not sure right now. So the first one is like the basically Pain from last season, except they added Misery instead of Duster. Pretty much a strong upgrade. No matter how strong Duster may have played, I think getting Misery as a captain is always going to be an upgrade. Because now this team has much more international experience.
Yeah.
I do think this team has what it takes to sort of like be a better version of last season's Pain Gaming. So going forward, I wouldn't be surprised if they made like a top 6 run, for example, at some event. Do they have what it takes to upset to like a major win? I doubt it.
No way.
But I think they could at some point be at a point where they maybe consistently make top 8 at events and maybe even top 6s, which is already like a huge thing for this team. So I think this season could be really big for them. The other one, not so much, but I do think it's worth talking about them because I think this is another good example of what Dota these days should be about, like how to form Dota teams. Forming Dota teams shouldn't be restricted to a single region. These teams or these players on their own have all been part of really trashy teams. But they've now made the upgrade of just uniting because they realize, well, if we just play together, we could actually be a really good team. We might not necessarily be from the same region. You guys might not speak English that well, but hey, if we play together, we could crush some teams. And they played really well. I mean, in the Hamburg thing, on the Hamburg qualifier, they made it to the finals. Yeah, they beat J Storm.
Yeah, they're the major.
And they're at the major as well. It's like, I think this is a living proof that Dota or forming rosters should not be restricted to regions. And that's, I think, one of my biggest takeaways in this season, or for the past 2 seasons in general. Like, you shouldn't just look towards your neighbor if you want to form a Dota team, right?
Yeah, like basically when Europe and NA combined, like everybody else had to escalate too.
Pretty much. Though some of them were like very slow to do so. I think I'm happy it is a process and it is a progress that keeps on happening.
Mm-hmm.
China, as we mentioned earlier,
China's getting that SEA talent. SEA is trying to get NA, SA, NA now. Like, basically, there's besides the CIS, I don't necessarily think there's like a region that's like closed off at this point.
Pretty much.
All right, so the last region, SEA.
SEA, best for last.
That's one way to put it. Where do I start here?
Probably Fnatic. Everything before that is like whatever.
All right, Fnatic is the only good team, basically. That's my first off. That's my point of view. I don't know what you think. I think they're the only good team right now from SEA.
Yeah, I'm very disappointed in all the other rosters.
And yeah, that's about it. That's all I got. Like Ice, obviously one of the best offlaners ever. Still, I think MP can be consistent. Abed, DJ, Ice, your clear 3 trio of players you have to play around. Jabs, pretty good 5. There you go. Best SEA team.
Best SEA team. You would think that Mineski would be the one to challenge them, but then if you look at all the results and the way they've been playing, it's like.
And then I look at Mineski. You kept Nana. Okay, next.
Mineski. They didn't even make it out. They didn't even make it out of the open qualifier for like the for the Hamburg major or like the for the Hamburg event or whatever.
Like the only other team I think is like worth not talking about, but like the only other team I think has any upside potential is TNC. That's it.
Maybe Tigers. I think Tigers
might have a chance, but I was like, I don't know, man. Like we seen. I guess Ajit's quite good, so.
Ajit and I think In Your Dream are the 2 players that have the most explosive potential in SEA outside of like Fnatic obviously. I would technically put in TNC with Armel and Gabby, but I feel like Gabby has been both Gabby and Armel have been disappointing me for too long now, so that I can't like rate them too highly. But I think Ajit and In Your Dream are like 2 players that, and I mean, if they don't make it this season, then you can count them out as well. But I think they're like, like In Your Dream has been on the cusp of like making it and like establishing himself for a while now. But basically, like he's been trying really hard and he's been in and out of teams here and there. But I think this season having 1437 as a captain and also Moonman in the team, like 2 very experienced players, I think it really helps them. So. I expect this team to be a potential sort of like upsets. They are a Dream League as well. So for me, this team has the potential to be like the second best team in SEA.
Okay. All right, I think about covers it for Dota 2 rosters. Like there's a shit ton, obviously, but like nobody else is really interesting me right now. Like, is there any other team you can think of you want to talk about?
No.
Yeah. All right. So we'll move on to CS:GO. And the major just happened. And I personally think this is probably the worst major in CS:GO history.
Tell me why.
Well, first off, part of it is because of the FACEIT TO themselves. Like when you're playing when you're running a major, like it should technically be a celebration of the game and the competitive scene. But like you're basically missing like half of the talent roster, whereas like compare that to TI, literally everybody is there. Right? So that's pretty the first much. Knockoff. Second knockoff is you had like the worst first week ever of any major tournament. And then the final
that was rough.
The third knockoff is like you kept using the Swiss format and like it and all anybody can see is like how bad it is at this point. Like there's no excitement left in it. And then finally you got 0 good games in the playoffs, which that part isn't their fault, but it's like that
isn't their fault, but it added to it.
And then here we are, worst major ever. I will say, fucking Astralis is fucking amazing, but beyond that,
I also thought that the production, like the stream, was just like not interesting to follow. It felt like watching ECS, like another season of ECS.
Yeah, it felt like ECS, but that's like this is a major, right? You have to step up your game.
Exactly. When I watched the first 2 stages, right, like the group stages, like the challenger stage and the legend stage or whatever, it was so disappointing. First of all, how there was no difference between the 2 stages, which I think there should have been. Like I think they should have made it clear from the broadcast point of view that we're watching a different stage. Like this is about legends now. Like this is like because people call it the actual major, right? The new legend stage. and it never felt like it was. It never, like, the whole production in general never felt like a major. And then what did they do between the Legend stage and the Champion stage? They show, like, the player profiles. They released them between the two.
Which made no sense, right?
This is something you reveal as part of the broadcast. Like, why would they do that? Especially if they only schedule 2 games in the playoffs per day, which I thought was a really good move, by the way, because that gives fans a lot of time to enjoy the matches and not having to decide between certain matches, right? And plus, it never leads to like heavy delays because you only have 2 matches a day. Like, why not bake those profiles into the broadcast? Look at TI. It's unfair to compare tournaments to TI in a lot of ways because TI has funding that nobody else can like compete with, because ultimately, like, $70 million is provided by the fans that Valve can reinvest into the tournament. Obviously, they're not going to use all the 70 million, but still. But still, if you look at TI, if you look at other events, even ESL, and I think ESL, I tend to trash on ESL a lot, but what they do is run really good events and like memorable events. Like, you look back on some ESL events and you think to yourself, well, that was really hype, that was really dope, because they bake these sort of like videos and they have like fun things on the side, or just in general good things on the side. But just face it, tournament was just like it felt really flat. I wouldn't necessarily say it was the worst, but I can definitely understand why you would think so.
I mean, is there? You can't say it's the worst, but is there one you would call the worst then? Gotcha.
That's actually really true. That's actually
really like because they're like I went back and watched like the old majors, right? Like even the ones like the shitty like DreamHack Hall and shit. Like, guess what? There's the trick about running a good tournament is getting a good game. Those had good games in them, but this one didn't.
True.
Like that's sadly like the point. Like, if you don't get good games, then you're gonna be judged based off of like your production, your talent, all the other stuff. And basically, all I remember is Pasha only got 2 eggs, and you had a chicken on the broadcast. That's all I remember.
That's basically it. No, I agree. No, now that you've pointed that out, I have to agree. It was the worst major.
Yeah. Like, it's harsh to say, like, but it's true. Sadly.
Sadly, yeah.
But yeah, what did you think of your own team's run then? Give me that.
Our team run was impressive, I think, but at the same time, it almost feels like if this wasn't our team, I would always put an asterisk there. So I kind of have to do that asterisk now as well. Like, we play best of ones.
Yep.
That's I have always been a very big proponent or an opponent of best of ones, because best of ones are trash.
Yep.
Best of ones are absolute trash, no matter which game. And it feels stupid to say this now because obviously I'm very happy about our team, and I do think that if it was best of 3, we probably still would have made the playoffs. Or if I look at each opponent that we face, if we had faced them best of 3s, I still would have felt confident. But it just lays a bitter taste in my mouth. And again, if I look at any other team that made it that far, I do have to say that it's best of 1s. It's a stupid format, and it's also unfortunate because if you play best of 1s throughout, suddenly in a best of 3, you're like, you don't know what to do, honestly, because suddenly it's a different scenario. Yep. I think I think it would have been almost more beneficial for us to like even lose to certain teams in best of 3s, because it would have given us a little bit more experience. Like losing to Astralis in best of 1, what like when you get crushed by Astralis on like I think Inferno we played, that doesn't give you any experience really. In a best of 3 at least you have like the veto thing where you have like the whole veto system that you can fall back on and be like, all right, maybe next time we veto this one at that point, right? Maybe we realize that if we veto this, whatever. And then of course the matches, you at least play 2 matches, and that's just so much more experience. I don't know. Best of 1s out of trash, but generally speaking, I'm very happy with our team. I think we've talked about it a little bit before that as well. Like the players, they just need more confidence. I think most of them. I think you could tell against MIBR in the second map that they just lack confidence after that first map.
They basically disappeared. No offense, but
yeah.
Like
no, they did.
That's what happens. Like, because your core is built around like inexperienced players.
And again, I think if we had played more games this tournament, we wouldn't be at that point where if we had more experience playing a second game, That's the thing, right? If we have more experience playing a second game, I don't think we falter that much. I'm not saying that we don't have experience, because we've been scrimming for like 2 weeks straight, and we've been playing so many officials online as well, but it just doesn't compare to playing these like online tournament best of threes, and it's such a big disappointment actually. As a viewer as well, I think best of ones are utter trash to view. It's like, oh hooray, you happened to win the pistol round, and then you had that one round where you got kind of lucky with that headshot or whatever, and that automatically got you like 5 rounds ahead.
Oh, you want another pistol? That's 8 rounds. Like
so
like of course the only team that doesn't count as Astralis. Oh, here, I will let you win both pistol rounds. I'll let you win the force buy. Oh, we won 16-3. Cool. Like, god damn it, Astralis. But that's about it.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, there's so much RNG still in CS as a game because of, like, I mean, that's just what it is. The best ones, there's just no fair measurement of actual skill and like performance level.
And like obviously this part isn't on Face It, but you go from TI, not even just TI, you go from like DAC or like any of the other Dota 2 tournaments. It's just like a double limb bracket. Like, it's just a single limb playoffs. Like, come on, man, come on.
That's another really good point. Like, these, especially if we have such a flawed group stage system already, like Astralis face round 1. Like, come on, you know. Plus, it always leaves a bitter taste in my mouth when I see these tournaments and we see certain teams and certain peaks, right? Yeah. But then you don't get to see them play against one another because of how the seeding works. So we never got to see Astralis play MIBR, for example.
Yeah.
Actually, we did kind of in the group stage, but that's like another best of one, so it doesn't really matter.
That was a 16-0, though. What was a 16-0?
Yeah, it was a 16-0.
That's pretty
16-0. True, that was a 16-0.
But you didn't get to see Liquid play against MIBR, FaZe gets play MIBR. Or like, I didn't get to see, like, I think this would have been a pretty interesting matchup, Complexity versus Hellraisers. Like, that would have... For sure. Would have been a very, like... Would have been a very narrow thing because you both have inexperienced players, right? And like more experienced leaders playing against each other with like very different map pools would have been interesting.
And honestly, even if we had played like, you give me any of the other teams, any of the other 6 teams, I would have gladly lost 2-0 against them or 0-2 against them too. But it would have just been so important for these players to actually get that experience. Like, if you attend this major, to me, it doesn't really feel like you get a lot of experience playing out of it as compared to, like, if a team goes to TI, they play TI, you bet your ass they get a shit ton of experience. They play, like, 9 group stage games, best of 2s, by the way, and then they play a double Olymp playoff bracket. Like,
yeah.
It just feels so disappointing. It just feels so disappointing.
Yeah, like, I'll put it this way. Like, Pain were eliminated first round before even the playoffs at TI. They still played more games than almost everybody here at this major.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's
sad.
It's a different sort of vibe. But, yeah. Basically, all the chickens came home to roost, in a sense. Like, you didn't get any of the playoff game. You didn't get any of the good games. So all we're left to look at is, like, all the flaws in the tournament.
Pretty much. It's almost good that this happened, because a lot of times you get like really sick playoff games and you forget about all the shit that happened beforehand. Like, at least like the large part of the community, like the vocal part, they tend to forget about like the actual bad shit. Like, if I remember the first 2 days that all the delays happened and people were crying out that it was the worst major of the world in history, people were like, well, you will unfortunately forget about this once the playoffs come around and you get like really sick matches. I'm happy that the playoffs wasn't like super sick, because then people can remember that this first week was one of the trashiest thing to ever grace esports broadcasting.
Yeah, it was getting the Shanghai levels, basically.
Yeah.
Like,
I know a lot of things were out of their control, or at least officially out of their control, with like the internet being down, but at the same time, this is millions of dollars on the line, like not in prize pool, but in terms of like, you know, I mean, they are investing probably over $1 million because of this. Why is there no backup? Like, events do run with backup internet. Like, some events do that, like, for a very good reason. Valve, especially, actually, as far as I know, has always at least 2 lines of connections in the stadium. So one's for the broadcast, one's for the players. So why is this not the case here? Like, why do they not have this kind of like backup running? It's
like, I know in MLG's case, like there was a literal moose that ran over the wire in one of the old StarCraft 2 tournaments.
It's like, that's like.
But here's the thing, they actually got a bunch of satellite trucks to fix the internet. Like, whereas here is like, nothing happened. You just lost. Like, come on, guys, come on. Like,
Yeah,
it's hard.
This is why
it's hard to blame them, but at the same time, they have to take responsibility for it. It's like this is your legacy you built. Like, you got the major, and this is what we will remember for you for.
Especially since it was London major. I think there was a lot of hopes to like have a really sick UK event because UK has such a rich history in esports. It felt like very disappointing. Like,
I also thought it was really weird that they didn't get any of the UK talent because they're like super famous in CS:GO.
I don't know. That was super weird to me as well, but that's something that I've always been very disappointed with when it comes to Face It. Like, obviously, there's a lot of like politics involved when it comes to making talent decisions, and Face It to me seems like the biggest violator of that sort of like, oh, we don't want these people at our event, or rather, we definitely want to make sure these people are at our event, right? And I don't know. Again, I just can't not use the word disappointing because that's what this whole event has been.
I mean, it was disappointing. If you want to know more, though, you should probably watch Thorn's YouTube videos. Like, I'm sure he'll thrash them even more. Like, but yeah, we'll go on to an actual good event. ESL 1 New York also happened. Did you get to watch any of it?
I did get to watch a little bit of New York. There was some event that ran at the same time. Oh, I know.
Blast Istanbul also ran.
Well, Blast and technically our own event as well. Like, we played in that like side event, that MSI Gaming Arena, whatever.
Okay. Yeah, a bunch of events.
Dude, all right. Best of one. Who runs a best of one double elim event?
That's
best of one. That's best of one finals.
That's some old school 2002 shit.
That was when I found out midway through the tournament, by the way. Like, I was preparing like a tweet like, oh, we'll be back in a second to play game 2, and then I find out it's like only game 1. Like, there's only one game. Like, what the hell? And then the finals is best of one as well. Anyway, ESL 1 New York. See, that's the thing, right? ESL knows how to run good events, and I think ESL 1 New York, it's really awkward, these kind of like post-major events, because you don't necessarily, especially since it was at the same time as Blast, you don't get the best teams. You don't get the best team lineup. But they still got like a really sick lineup, except
they got basically everybody except MIBR and Astralis, and MIBR is like kind of iffy, right?
Yeah, true.
And
but then
here's the thing: is like they basically made sure Astralis wasn't here to like destroy fucking everybody. So it was interesting in that sense.
It was interesting in that sense, but then you have like Navi and FaZe just deciding to have their worst performance all year long.
Yeah, that was fucking great because I think they're both literally they should both break up very, very soon. Like, Kerrigan's not in-game leading anymore, and if he's not in-game leading, he may as well fucking leave.
I mean, I think this is literally what Astralis were at before they kicked them.
Exact same moment. Like, here, I'll give you a prediction. Here's what's gonna happen. FaZe, I'm gonna assume Nico has taken over control as king of FaZe at this point. He's going to bring in some random star player, I don't know which one, to replace Kerrigan. And then Kerrigan is going to join some random international team. It doesn't matter which one. Because if it's NIP, Optic, or Mouse, he's going to take that team, he's going to make it championship level, and then for the next 6 months, he's only going to spend his entire life trying to get revenge on FaZe and winning. Like, it's gonna repeat. The cycle's gonna repeat. I swear to God.
No, but it literally feels that way. It literally feels that way. Like, as highly as people, and I also value Kerrigan, I think at this point it's kind of evident that he doesn't have what it takes to actually make raise like a major winner in a lot of ways.
I thought he was pretty close to the FaZe lineup. I
mean, he was. He was.
That one, you can't really blame him for that much.
True.
The rest of them you can. The rest of them you can. That one, not so much.
But at this point, you have to ask yourself: is he ever going to get that close again? And if he does get that close, can he this time actually close? Like,
I actually think it's possible, but here's my reasoning why though. The major formats suck.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
So like, we Gambit made it. Like, if fucking Gambit can make it, I don't see any reason Kerrigan can't. I'll put it that way.
It's true. I keep forgetting that you can't actually logically think about this, technically speaking, because the fucking major formats are the worst possible formats you could think of.
Yeah, they're basically worse than every like CS:GO Premier event, and they're certainly way worse than all the Dota 2 ones. So
yeah, as a person coming from Dota, it does hurt watching the major.
yeah,
Like whatever.
like I
Let's
actually,
not go back to that.
I actually have like a system. I think basically Kerrigan needs to realize his system is he needs to join a team, but every 6 months he must do a hard roster shuffle of at least kicking 2 players. Because he is by far the single best captain I've ever seen at getting a team from 0 to like 95 in like 3 days. He's done it like 3 or 4 times now. He did it with TSM when he joined them. He did it with FaZe all 3 times. Like what do you want? Like he can totally fucking do it. So if you just literally switch every time, because here's the problem with Kerrigan, it's like he can't get over the final hump, right? So you just keep surprising them over and over and over again every 6 months, because like they have to relearn everything you're doing, because you're bringing in 2 different elements every time, and he can get them to work. That's how I think he does it.
All right, but then let's think about it this way then. Let's say even if he does that, he needs to find a new team now, like because we're assuming that FaZe kick him.
Well, I think every team would want him. Like,
all right, but which team do you think he should go to?
All right,
if he could have a free pick.
If I could have a free pick,
yeah, and logically free pick. Like he's obviously Astralis is not going to take him back right now. Like why would they, right? But like logically speaking, which team would definitely want him and pick him up, and which team do you think would be the best choice then?
NIP.
That would be an interesting challenge.
I think you put that fool on NIP, they're gonna fucking run game, like because NIP has ridiculous talent right now, and they're already knocking on the door. Like you go to Blast Istanbul, the only reason NIP isn't in that finals against Astralis is because they tied with MIBR.
Yeah,
and they had a huge lead against MIBR. If they get one more round there, and I think Kerrigan's good enough for that one extra round, they'd be in that finals. And I think that team with Kerrigan would be fucking dangerous.
What do you think about Cloud9?
With Kerrigan?
Yeah.
They have no good players. Like, okay, I'll explain that. Automatic is good, but he needs a space maker. There's no space maker. And somebody told me, oh, what about Rush? Rush doesn't play that style anymore. He hasn't played it for years. And he looks like completely demotivated. But I assume Kerrigan can make him work. Fine, you got 2 players, maybe. But you still need 1 more to activate Automatic. Skadoodle is done. Golden is no good. Obviously, he'd probably replace Golden in this scenario. Flusha has been terrible for the last 6 months. And he has motivational issues. Like, this is a guy who literally, at the peak of his career, would only show up for majors. Like, come on. There's nothing good there for me to work with.
All right.
If the other good choice is obviously, I think most people think of this as Optic. You just kick out Snappy and get Kerrigan in there. Get config with Kerrigan, he's gonna start blasting off heads again.
Ooh, that could be nasty, actually. Yeah, I actually didn't even think about that because Optic was just not on my radar right now.
Because if you think about it, think about it. That Optic lineup has a bunch of good pieces. Yugi apparently is considered like the best Danish opper. Config was literally a top 5 player under MSL last year. Cajun B, like he failed under MSL last year, but that's because he was forced to use an op. Kerrigan won't make that mistake. Kerrigan knows how to use Cajun B. You get in Kerrigan in there, you just add one other player, Kerrigan's choice. And there are a lot of different players you can pick from right now. If you want a supportive end player, get Stico. Mm-hmm. If you want like a hyper carry, you can get maybe Scream. Maybe if you want an entry fragger, get Croman. Like a bunch of choices out there they can get. And you get Kerrigan running it, that team's gonna instantly go to like a top 6, top 10-ish level with under Kerrigan. Like literally, there's only 3 teams in this world that don't need Kerrigan: Astralis, Liquid, and the only reason Liquid don't need Kerrigan is because I don't think he would work well with the Zeus. And then MIBR, because obviously Fallen is still a legit great leader, so they don't need him.
Yeah.
But every other team could literally use Kerrigan and would literally be better for it. Even the fucking CIS teams. I swear to God, if you gave... I swear to God, if like Kerrigan sat down and started learning Russian, I think he could replace Zeus.
All right, then, because we're already sort of like in this thought experiment like phase, now that North, now that they benched God, what's his name
MSL.
again? MSL. Who do you think could pick him up? Because I mean, obviously he's also.
See, MSL is a bit harder because you would have to pick a team that legitimately wants to go his style of play. Because like a majority of these players like to play a looser style, more akin to FaZe than Astralis, right? So it would have to be a team that legitimately believes in tactics, and that's a much harder thing to sell. And Liquid won't do it because maybe MSL is a better leader than Nitro, but I don't know if he works well with Zeus, and he's definitely a worse player than Nitro, so you wouldn't want that. I think actually the most obvious choice is Optic again for MSL. Reunite MSL with Config. That would always work, right?
Is that going to happen though?
Listen, they might have split up, but think about the Stanislaw Shazam split with Optic against Config and Cage and B. There was a shit ton of shit that went down, right? But here's the thing: if you think about it logically, the kick that Cage and B and Config got from North was probably more painful than that split up with Complexity with the NA players, and they didn't say shit to MSL, which basically tells me there's at least some level of respect there. So I think it could still work.
Oh, that's a good point. Plus, I mean, these are actual at some point also like adults to a degree, even though I think Config is like 19 or whatever.
Yeah, pretty young.
People do get over grudges. Even if there had been grudges, people do get over them. And I think in Dota especially, I mean, Paladai in AOI returning to Envy, I think is the biggest proof that there's no eternal grudge, really. That could be a good one. Like Optic definitely is.
There isn't that many other good choices. Like I could see why Mouse might want to try it, but you'd have to rejig the whole thing because I think you'd have to kick out Snacks or MSL, but like that wouldn't necessarily work. Like somebody else would have to like change rules and shit. Like you'd have to rejig the entire thing if you wanted MSL and Mouse, and at that point it's basically just a new team.
Right.
So like I think he's a very good in-game leader. I think there's a lot of good things about him, but it has to be a very specific team. Like they have to have, and maybe a team with like team identity. And the only team identity I can think of that follows his suit is Optic right now. So yeah, I think that's about it for that. I guess one last thing about ESL New York. Did you see the finals, Liquid versus Mouse Sports?
Again, I only watched the first map, which was Cash.
Cash.
Was Cash? Yeah, it was Cash, right? Actually, I have to. And then I watched the first half of Dust 2. So in my head, it was like that game was over. Yeah. Like in my head, that series was over. No. I watched. Sorry, I didn't watch Cash. I watched Nuke and Inferno, and then Dust, like the first half of Dust 2.
Yeah.
So in my head, this game was 100% over. Like the series was over.
Yeah.
And I went to bed. I woke up. Mouse had won.
Yes.
What?
All right. So I wrote an article about this. I don't know if you read it, but basically I'm going to summarize it with a quote that I didn't actually write. It's from Fang Hui, the European Go champion from a few years ago, like 14, 15, 16 or whatever. And he basically says this: you're afraid to lose. You're afraid to lose because you don't want victory to get away from you. But when you're afraid, you will always let victory slip away from you. And that's basically what happened with the Liquid here. Because after they go 11-4 on their Dust 2T side, right? You're thinking in your head, okay, you literally just need 5 more rounds, you win. They get 2 of them immediately because they win the pistol and then they win the subsequent one. So now it's only 3 rounds. But the difference between Liquid and Mouse here is Mouse is like very, like Mouse throughout this entire thing was stuck to their guns. They basically played individualistic. They're like, okay, we have a basic structure and tactics, but within those tactics, every single player has individual freedom to make a subsequent choice in what play they want to make, right?
Right.
And so basically they all went balls out. They all did like crazy decisive stuff that was dangerous. But what they were basically saying, we want to win this game. We will make this play to win this game. Like one of the best examples I remember was like a 2v4 Mouse versus Liquid, and they were like Sunny and Snacks were the last two guys alive for Mouse. So they run from catwalk into the A site, get 2 headshots, right?
Oh yeah, I watched that one.
And they plant it, and then Sunny's like, "Fuck it, I am going to bet it all on a flank on their retake," and he almost wins it, but he loses. But that's basically this kind of style Mouse is playing. It's like we're going to bet it all, and we're going to do it decisively, not going to second guess anything. Whereas Liquid is like, "Oh shit, they got a kill on A site. I guess we'll just save. Oh shit, they got an entry kill on B site. I guess we'll just save," and just kept saving and saving and saving. So it literally felt like they were waiting for the perfect moment. Oh, we're up. We're going to win this now. Like, and it never happened for them in Dust 2. Like, literally, the only reason they got to overtime was because, like, Taco pulled out a fucking hero play against Ropes to save them at the very, very end. Right? And so, like, when you look at it that way, it's, no matter how you cut it, like, it's not there's no single individual, but they are chokers. Because they all knew, every fucking player, every team, I guess except for maybe Mouse, everybody else knew Liquid was supposed to win this finals.
Pretty much.
Better map pool, better skill, better structure. You had 5 of the 7 players in the... Like, basically, they're doing the Astralis in this tournament. They had all 5 of their players in the top 7 rated of this tournament. Usually, I don't bring up stats, but, like, that's ridiculous, basically. It's like basically...
That is ridiculous.
And not only that, all from games 1 through 4... Twist was not just the MVP. He was the MVP by a fucking mile, and you guys still lost. Like, what else do you want me to say? Like, I like this team a lot, but they did choke.
And this is where I think it was Thorin that said it, and it did ring true for me as well. Like, this is a little bit reminiscent of Astralis.
Yeah.
Before they, I mean, actually won.
They're literally Astralis Junior.
Basically, yeah, and it's down to, well, can they weather the storm effectively? Because this is not easy to get out of. Like, actually learning how to win effectively is super difficult.
This is actually literally the final hurdle, and this is like the hardest one you can get.
Absolutely hardest one, because you kind of have what it takes, but then there's just that one thing that's kind of like missing still, and it's like so difficult to get that. Like, there's been teams like trying. I mean, again, Astralis is a perfect example of like a team that needed to figure out how to win. In Dota, we had Cloud9 unable to figure out how to win. Like, even though you can on any given day beat any team, it is always going to be that team in the finals that you can't beat, and that's just brutal. And this is kind of why this New York event was so important, because such a throwaway event is like winning that event. Like,
they had to win it. They had to win it.
They had to win it. They really had to win it, because that's like such a big confidence boost, right?
Yeah, like the only team they were allowed to lose to was either FaZe or Na'Vi. They were out. You had to win this.
And there were no excuses not to win this. And like I said, this was a massive choke. Mm-hmm. Like they were up 13-4 on Dust 2. Yeah. Like, you cannot give away that lead.
And you went to overtime, and you got your economy back, and you still couldn't close it out. It's like,
yeah.
I will say this is like Taco did play really fucking good on Dust 2 and Mirage, but like it didn't matter. Like, it's like he can't make the other players championship mentality just because he himself is a champion. Like, it's something the younger players are gonna have to get over by themselves if they get over it. But I think in all likelihood they will. Like, there's only 2 players in history that I can think of that never got over it, and they're both like single player games. Like Yellow from Brood War, Stu from StarCraft 2. That's it basically. Like, every other fucking like runner up eventually got theirs. Howie got TI, Eternal Envy got the major. Like, they all fucking got theirs, unless you weren't good enough, like Sing Sing or Bone 7. But disregard that. But yeah, and then there's also the fact that basically like Chris J murdered them on Mirage. Like, I don't know if you saw it. Do you see the Chris J ace?
Oh, I did.
Like,
that was insane.
Like, that's literally the moment. Is like, that's the difference between Liquid and Mouse, right? Like, if you wanted to sum up the entire series, it's that moment.
It's probably that ace, yeah.
Because basically, like, oh shit, Liquid is in a 4v2. They have everything they need, and then Chris J's like, the theoretical good play would be like, oh, you go save here, like Liquid did on Dust 2. Chris J's like, no, fuck it, I'm going to kill everybody and everything, and it kills everybody.
You know, and the funny thing is, Mouse has been playing like this sort of like almost like reckless style before, or like for a while, but it has been punished numerous times.
Yeah, it has.
and now, in all places, like Liquid basically reward them for free. It's like, yeah, sure, take it.
Yeah. So yeah, like Mouse is a fun team in that sense because like they understand like that's their win condition. They have to play reckless. Like I won't say it's like completely unthought of, as like there's calculations to it. There's tactics, there's structure. Like in Mirage, like Chris J rushes B 3 times, and because it works the first 2 times, he knows the third time won't work. But because he knows the third time won't work, he basically uses it as like a space creation. So like 3 players can instantly burst out of palace on the opposite side of the map and take the site, because he knows they're going to hard counter him if he does that move, and they do it, but free sight, and they win the round. Like there is a certain like thought to it, but it's not consistent. It's not very consistent. But like, put it this way, Mouse did everything in their power to win. Liquid basically were trying to hope the win was going to come to them after like, because they were playing pretty fucking good in their first like 3.5 maps, and then they fell off.
Yeah, I think, you know, the whole like the old saying, like Mouse were basically playing to win and Liquid was just playing not to lose, and that's just not what you can do at this level.
Yeah. You have to make the risk. You have to make the risk sometimes, and they refuse to do it. Basically,
it's not even that they. I'm not even sure if they refuse to do it. I think it's just really too scared to actually do it, because
they convince themselves not to do it. Yeah.
Individually, we've seen some of these players try to go for hero plays in previous rosters before. So I wonder if they're just like really scared based on like what they've sort of like basically been telling themselves to like they've probably been like under really strict training. They've been very disciplined, like basically playing as a team to get to where they are, right? And then I think at that point it's really difficult to ultimately throw it all away and be like, well, at this point, screw all the strategy. I just got to go for this hero play. Like, I think it's very difficult to do that. So yeah, this is something they will have to figure out for themselves, like how to win how to win CS, how to win a tournament, rather. So yeah, this is difficult, and I really hope they can come out of this, because it is very fun to watch Liquid play when they're on, they're on. Like, you know, that's beautiful to watch.
I think they're legitimately the second best team in the world, except they can't win titles.
Yeah.
And
I know another team. I know another team that could do that.
Yeah.
FaZe? What? Actually, now they're not even that good anymore. Yeah. But and I guess they did win a couple of titles here and there. Yeah. But
even though Navi and FaZe won titles, Liquid still has yet to do it. Besides Summit, I guess. Yeah. But that's about it. I will end this with a quick thing about Blast. Strawless era, right? Like MIBR almost pulled it out against them, but like I'll explain it like this. I felt like MIBR was playing really good, like their A game. Astralis was playing like their C/B game. It felt like at times, because like Astralis, they usually have to prepare for a tournament like 1 or 2 weeks before they go into it to be very, very good. This one they came straight off the major, still held against MIBR, still got to that close position where you think that maybe they could fall down. They didn't. Still won. That's like that's what you want from champions, and Charles Sarah. Right. It's
a bit of a shame that they're not going to be at Epicenter. I feel like that would have been the next big event to sort of like
I think
establish further dominance.
I think they're connected with Blast, so they're like, oh, they're right next to each other. So we have to prepare. You can only choose one of them. So which one you have to be is like, oh, well, they pay us.
Oh yeah, they have to go to Copenhagen. Yeah,
and it is Copenhagen. It's like
it is Copenhagen.
It is their fucking home country. So gotta go there.
Right.
But yeah, it is too bad because I think Epicenter has a better format.
It has and it is actually a competitive event. Like, to me, no offense to Blast, but these Blast Pro Series events, to me, they're like,
they feel like
it almost feels like they're like fun events, you know?
Like basically it's like a division between like the mainstream TV stuff and the CS:GO events, because like that's kind of what this format is like a compromise between the two. And listen, it's fine in and of itself because like you want variety in the calendar, but like I'm not putting it at the same level as Epicenter, ESL, Star Ladder, DreamHack, those types of events.
Yeah, and this is why I think Epicenter would have been so good, because right now, now is such a crucial time for these teams like FaZe, Navi, Liquid.
They're all about to break.
Except they're about to break, but they like one really good win could help them, and it almost like. I guess it helps them that Astralis isn't here, because it's like one less opponent to like beat, and obviously like
they can't beat them anyway.
Yeah, they can't beat them anyway, so it's really good that they're not here. But I think for Astralis, it also would have been good to just basically just further assert dominance and be like, yeah, guys, just give up.
Okay, I think there's one last piece of news I guess I'll go over. Hobbit is now open to transfer from Gambit.
Oh, has that been made official yet?
Yeah, it's right after ESL New York. It basically said they said it during the major after they dropped out. Like Hobbit will be open to transfer after we finish our run at ESL New York. So basically, this is a dead team. Gambit is now. Hobbit to Navi. What do you think?
I think that's the next logical step, isn't it?
I think it's the only step they got to take it.
Basically, yeah.
But here's the thing. I everybody thinks they should kick out Edward. But basically, as far as I can tell, Edward's like the entry fragger.
I think they should kick out Flamey.
They have to kick out Flamey. Like it makes no sense. But here's the thing: if they do, here's the ultimate move though. Ready for this? You kick out both Flamey and Edward, and you get Hobbit and Adren.
Ooh, that's a star-studded team.
That's my fucking team. That's my team. That's the team that's the team I think can actually fight Astralis.
I mean, that team can take on the world at once. All of them at once. Nah, that sounds really dope, actually. Yeah.
So basically, what I'm hoping for is Navi writes out the check, gets his Jen and Hobbit, and then we're good to go. The ultimate challenge against Astralis.
Sounds good.
Yeah. All right. I think that about covers it. Been here for over an hour and a half. So, got any shout outs?
No, I'm good. Shout out to everybody that actually watches the show. There was a comment on Reddit actually recommending our show.
Oh yeah.
There's people talking about lack of good podcasts in Dota, and somebody linked our show, and I was like, hey, that's pretty dope. Oh. So shout out to those that listen in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We'll see.
I would love to say we do it for you guys, but actually I think I'm pretty much doing it for myself, because I like talking to other people.
Yeah.
So it's like whatever.
And we'll probably.
But still, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. We'll probably do it again eventually. Probably before or after Hamburg is my guess, but we'll see.
Yeah.
All right.
See, this is the beauty of this show. It lives esports by having a super flaky schedule.
Yeah. It does. All right. See you guys later.